Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. It was an ancient castle, older than memory itself, standing atop a cliff that overlooked the endless abyss. The structure was massive, its stone walls weathered by time and elements, covered in creeping vines that had long since claimed the fortress as part of the land itself. Every brick seemed to hold whispers of the past, as though the souls of those who once walked its halls were trapped within. The castle had a singular purpose, though. It stood as the final barrier between the world of light and the darkness that festered below, a darkness that no one truly understood. The air was always thick with fog, and the winds that howled through the barren trees seemed to carry the cries of the damned. No one approached the castle willingly anymore. Not since the first signs of corruption had appeared in the surrounding lands, the decay, the foul stench of death that clung to the villages, and the strange creatures that seemed to come out of the shadows when night fell. Only the most foolish or desperate ventured near. Derek had once been among the foolish, though not by choice. Now, as he stood at the entrance to the castle, staring up at the towering spires that jutted into the sky like spears, he couldn't help but feel the weight of everything crashing down on him at once. He had been summoned back to this place, his family's legacy, by forces far beyond his understanding. And yet, here he was, the last of the guardian line, the one who would inherit a duty he neither wanted nor believed in. He felt a hand on his shoulder, a gentle but firm grip that pulled him out of his daze. Elder Rowan, the ancient caretaker of the castle, stood beside him, his gnarled fingers gripping the worn staff he used for support. The old man had served Derek's family for as long as he could remember. His face was a map of wrinkles, each line telling a story of hardship and loyalty. His eyes, though clouded with age, still held the same fire they always had. "You can't escape it, boy," Rowan rasped, his voice as rough as the wind that battered them. "It's your blood. Your birthright. Whether you want it or not." Derek clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to argue. He had tried to run from this place, tried to live a normal life in the village, away from the crumbling castle and the dark legacy it represented. But the world didn't care about his plans. His father had died mysteriously, leaving him as the only heir to the title of guardian, a title that meant nothing to him until now. "I don't even know where to begin," Derek admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Rowan gave him a sidelong glance, his lips curling into a grim smile. "You'll learn, just as those before you did. But know this, time is running out. The seals are weakening. The darkness stirs beneath us, and if you don't act, it will consume everything." Derek swallowed hard. He had heard the rumors in the village. People spoke of strange occurrences, crops withering overnight, livestock disappearing, and unnatural sounds echoing in the dead of night. He had ignored them, dismissing them as superstition. But now, standing at the threshold of the abyss, he couldn't deny the truth any longer. Something was wrong. The air itself felt heavy with malice, as though the ground was waiting to split open and unleash the horrors that lay below. Taking a deep breath, Derek stepped forward. The castle gates creaked open, revealing the dark, empty corridors within. The smell of damp stone and decay assaulted his senses as he entered. This place had been abandoned for too long, left to rot like the legacy it carried. He had no idea how to fulfill his role as guardian, no idea where to start. But he knew he couldn't walk away. Not anymore. Rowan followed closely behind him, his staff tapping against the floor with each step. "We have much to discuss, boy," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "But first, you need to see the abyss for yourself. Only then will you understand the gravity of what you're up against." The abyss. The very word sent a chill down Derek's spine. He had heard stories as a child, tales of ancient evils that lurked beneath the castle, bound by the magic of his ancestors. But those were just stories, right? Fantasies spun by frightened villagers to explain the strange happenings around them. Derek wasn't sure what to believe anymore. As they descended deeper into the castle, the air grew colder, the light dimmer. The walls were lined with ancient tapestries, depicting battles long forgotten, warriors clad in armor fighting against shadowy figures that seemed to ooze from the very ground. Derek's ancestors, no doubt, fighting the same evil he was now tasked with containing. Finally, they reached a set of iron doors, covered in rust and symbols Derek couldn't decipher. Rowan placed a hand on the doors, muttering something under his breath. A moment later, the doors creaked open, revealing a massive cavern beyond. Derek's breath caught in his throat as he stepped forward, his eyes widening in disbelief. The abyss was a swirling vortex of darkness, a bottomless pit that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The air around it crackled with unseen power, and Derek could feel it pulling at him, whispering to him, beckoning him to come closer. "This is what your family has guarded for generations," Rowan said, his voice low. "The seals that keep it contained are failing. If they break, the world will be overrun by the creatures that dwell within." Derek stared into the abyss, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of his ancestors pressing down on him, their voices whispering through the darkness. He had no idea how to fix this, no idea how to be the guardian they expected him to be. But he knew one thing for sure: Derek stood transfixed before the abyss, the dark chasm below pulling at him like a magnet. The swirling shadows seemed alive, whispering promises of power and destruction. Rowan's words echoed in his mind: "The seals are failing. How long do we have?" Derek asked, his voice barely audible over the low hum that emanated from the pit. Rowan's gaze was distant, his expression heavy with years of knowledge. "Not long. The darkness has been seeping out for weeks, but it's grown stronger in the last few days. I fear we may have less than a month before the first of the seals breaks completely." A knot formed in Derek's stomach. Less than a month to figure out how to stop something that had been held at bay for centuries. It felt impossible. He had no idea where to even start. The weight of the task was suffocating, and for a moment, he felt paralyzed, but he couldn't afford to hesitate. "Not with the world hanging in the balance." "Tell me what I need to do," Derek said, turning to face Rowan. "How do I stop this?" Rowan's eyes flickered with a mixture of sadness and hope. "There's a ritual, an ancient one, passed down through your family for generations. It's the only thing that can reseal the abyss, but it's dangerous. The magic required to perform it comes at a great cost." Derek frowned. "What kind of cost?" Rowan hesitated, his voice low. "The life of the guardian. The power needed to close the abyss will drain the life force of whoever performs the ritual." Derek's heart sank. Of course, there had to be a catch. The guardian's role had always been one of sacrifice, but the idea of giving up his life before it had even really begun felt like a cruel joke. He had never wanted this responsibility, had never asked to be part of this cursed lineage. And yet, here he was, faced with an impossible choice. Before he could respond, the ground beneath them rumbled, a low growl emanating from the abyss. The shadows twisted and writhed, as if in response to their conversation. Derek felt a surge of fear rise in his chest. "We don't have time to debate this," Rowan said, gripping his staff tightly. "If you don't do something soon, the abyss will consume everything. You were born for this, Derek. You were chosen." Derek clenched his fists, frustration bubbling up inside him. "Chosen? It was such a hollow word. He hadn't been given a choice, his fate had been decided the moment he was born into this cursed bloodline. But what choice did he have now? He could walk away, leave the world to its fate, but he knew that wasn't an option. Not really. With a heavy sigh, Derek nodded. Show me the ritual. I'll do whatever it takes. Rowan's face softened, and for the first time since Derek had returned to the castle, the old man seemed relieved. There's a book in the library, a tome that contains the ritual. We'll need to prepare, and quickly. The two of them made their way back through the dark corridors of the castle, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they climbed the stone staircase leading to the library, Derek's mind raced. He wasn't ready to die, he wasn't ready for any of this. But if it was the only way to stop the abyss from spilling into the world, he had no choice. When they reached the library, Rowan led Derek to a massive oak table where a large, dusty tome lay waiting. The pages were yellowed with age, and the leather binding was cracked. Rowan opened the book with reverence, carefully turning to a specific page. This is the ritual, Rowan said, his finger tracing the ancient text. It's a complex spell that requires a significant amount of magical energy. You'll need to draw power from the very heart of the abyss in order to complete it. Derek swallowed hard, his eyes scanning the faded words. And this will work? It'll seal the abyss for good? Rowan nodded, though his expression remained grave. It will. But as I said, the cost is great. The ritual will bind the guardian's soul to the abyss, ensuring that it remains sealed for as long as the guardian's spirit endures. Once the ritual is performed, there's no turning back. Derek took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had always known that being the guardian came with a price, but hearing it laid out so plainly made it feel all too real. Before he could speak, a voice interrupted their conversation. You don't have to do this alone. Derek spun around to see Lila standing in the doorway, her face illuminated by the dim light of the library. She had been a quiet presence since their first meeting, watching him from the shadows but never fully revealing her intentions. Now, as she stepped forward, there was a determination in her eyes that Derek hadn't seen before. What do you mean? Derek asked, his gaze narrowing. Lila glanced at Rowan before turning her attention back to Derek. I've been studying the abyss for years, long before I found you. I know things about its power that even your ancestors never understood. There may be another way to seal it, one that doesn't require your death. Rowan's brow furrowed, skepticism etched across his face. There is no other way, Lila. The ritual has been passed down for centuries. It's the only thing that can stop the abyss. Lila shook her head. You're wrong. The ritual your family used is a temporary fix, a bandage on a festering wound. I've uncovered something deeper, something that could destroy the abyss entirely. Derek's heart raced. What are you talking about? Lila hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. There's a force within the abyss, a source of its power. If we can reach it, if we can destroy it, the abyss will collapse in on itself. It's risky, but it's our only shot at ending this once and for all. Rowan's expression darkened. You're speaking madness, girl. No one can venture into the abyss and survive. Lila's gaze hardened. I'm not asking you to believe me, Rowan. I'm asking Derek to trust me. Derek felt torn between the two of them. Rowan's plan was clear, the path laid out before him, albeit one that led to his death. Lila's idea was wild, dangerous, and untested, but if it worked, it would free him from the fate that had been forced upon him. The decision weighed heavily on his shoulders. I'll go, Derek said finally, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "If there's even a chance that we can stop this without sacrificing myself, I have to try." Rowan opened his mouth to protest, but Derek silenced him with a look. "I'm not afraid to die, Rowan. But if there's a chance I can live, really live, then I have to take it." Lila smiled faintly, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and determination. "Then we leave at once." The journey into the abyss was unlike anything Derek had ever experienced. The darkness swallowed them whole as they descended deeper and deeper into the pit. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the walls seemed to pulse with a sickening energy. Shadows danced at the edges of Derek's vision, their forms shifting and writhing like living creatures. Lila led the way, her knowledge of the abyss guiding them through the treacherous landscape. Derek followed closely behind, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the abyss pulling at him, its power trying to consume him, but he resisted. He had to stay focused, he had to trust Lila. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, the darkness more oppressive. Derek could hear whispers all around him, voices calling out to him from the shadows. He tried to ignore them, but they grew louder with each step. "Don't listen to them," Lila said, her voice cutting through the noise. "The abyss is trying to break you. Stay strong." Derek nodded, forcing himself to block out the voices. They continued onward, their path winding through the twisted landscape of the abyss. The creatures that had once been held at bay now roamed freely, their grotesque forms barely visible in the darkness. Derek could feel their eyes on him, watching, waiting. Finally, they reached the heart of the abyss, a massive, pulsating orb of darkness that seemed to suck the very life from the air around it. Derek could feel its power thrumming through his veins, its malevolent energy threatening to overwhelm him. "This is it," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The source of the abyss power." Derek stared at the orb, his body trembling with fear and anticipation. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was his chance, his only chance, to end it all. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice shaking. Lila took a deep breath. "We destroy it. Together." Derek nodded, steeling himself for what was to come. They stood side by side, their hands outstretched toward the orb, channeling their energy into it. The darkness fought back, resisting their efforts, but they pushed harder, drawing on every ounce of strength they had. The orb shuddered, its surface rippling with waves of energy. Derek could feel the abyss pushing back, trying to consume him, but he held firm. He could feel Lila beside him, her energy intertwining with his, their combined strength driving them forward. With one final surge of power, the orb exploded in a blinding flash of light. The ground shook, and the walls of the abyss trembled as the darkness began to collapse in on itself. Derek could feel the abyss unraveling, its power fading as the orb was destroyed. He collapsed to the ground, his body exhausted but alive. The abyss was gone.